May the 5th is a lot more than just Cinco de Mayo this year. It's a new release day, and this week has a lot of good ones. There's a lot of good ones for the people who watch this channel for heavy metal, but there's also good stuff for those who watch it for just about everything. And this is a great example of that with Wilder Mind by Mumford Sons. Now, we talked about Babel whenever it came out, so I was interested to see where Mumford Sons was going to go from there with this, their third album. The first two definitely had a lot of similarities, and bear in mind there was material off of Babel that was being road tested already whenever Sigh No More was just being released. So these were songs that they had already had in their arsenal, with some being added in later. But with Wilder Mind, this is an album where the band gets to start fresh, and they do exactly that with this record, considering it's a record that sounds very conceptually different than its two predecessors. A lot of people, whenever you mention Mumford Sons and you ask them what they know about the band or what defines them, will probably define the sound more so than anything. The presence of the banjos, the fiddles, and sort of the rapid picking that you hear on songs such as I Will Wait, which was off of Babel, the lead single, and probably in time it became one of the most annoying songs that I had ever heard, considering I heard it all the time. It was the only Mumford Sons song they would play around this area for the span of about 7 months, and it definitely wore thin. But that's not what this band is all about. This band at heart is also a tremendously talented indie rock outfit. Yeah, that probably sounds really, really weird, but that's what this album is. This album is, it's more strikingly close to indie folk than anything else, and that's really at the core what Mumford Sons truthfully is. This is a group that has a lot of foundation in indie folk, and that is what you would call the first two albums, but a lot of people would define the folk sound more than the indie. This one's more the indie than the folk. You can tell the transition immediately with the very, very first track off of this album whenever you get to Thompson Square Park. It's a 5-minute long track, one of the longest on the album, and it just signals this change almost instantaneously, because gone are those staple banjos, that staple fiddle, that staple, that staple thing that really made Mumford Sons sound very kind of down-home country a little bit. It's very Southern inspired. Instead, this is an album that takes the approach that really reminds me of a folk version of perhaps a Black Crowes record, either that or something that would really stand very tall along with a lot of the alternative rock from the 1990s that didn't have the aggressive daddy issue edge. This is instead an album that really kind of contemplates a lot on love and contemplates a lot on expressions of freedom, either that or expressions of just generalized feeling, and it does so with tremendous potency. This is a band whose simple, soft voice can carry volume whenever it needs to accent a point. However, this is one where it is just as potent whenever it is soft. Throughout this record, you're going to notice that it likes to kind of balance itself out between some up-tempo tracks along with some slower, almost ballady, piano-driven songs that have a lot more of the production magic to them in their construction. And there was a production shift here on this album. Instead of going with the same gent that they had for the first two, they opted to jump ship, and one of the two men that they worked with is actually in the band The National, which actually could explain why this album seems to be drifting a little bit more toward the alternative rock of today, and one that definitely seems like it would feel very at home being on a radio station that plays exclusively alternative rock. The only problem that I sense with this is that, aside from Marcus Mumford's very distinct voice, there is not too much in the way of separation now, although song construction would probably place them right alongside Coldplay and bands of that variety, and then Marcus Mumford's voice would clearly show Chris Martin, the difference between Chris Martin's. Overall, I enjoyed this album actually a lot more than I did Sigh No More and Babel, and I think what it was is that while those two albums had great singles, they had terrific flow, and it really showed what Mumford Sons could be all about in that capacity and really help them blow up. I like this album because it's explorative. It's one that has a little bit more oomph behind it. It delivers a little bit more overall. It may not be one that is laced with singles that are going to get trapped in your skull for eternity and be played ad nauseum for 7 to 8 months at a time. I don't think this record does possess that. But what I do think it possesses is just a good, strong mix of songs, one that really showcases the band's dynamic suit and shows that they aren't just defined by that trademark sound that was exhibited on Sigh No More and Babel. These guys are a rock band. These guys are a folk rock band that is able to exhibit their indie side, that's able to exhibit a little bit of an alternative side, but all in all, whenever it's all said and done, these guys are a rock band through and through that really are just able to move people with their music, not to mention write damn good music as well. I like the way that this is put together. I enjoy very, very much how simple this is to listen to. It's something you can pick up and easily shoot through a couple of times without really feeling as though you're too bogged down by the task. It's something that makes a good background, and it's also something that when you're focused on listening to it, you don't feel overburdened by either simplicity or the amount of time that's still left. It's an album that feels very freeing. It's one that feels very rewarding, because it seems like every single time you hear something that may just be taking that mood away from you, kind of slowing down your love for this album, something comes along right afterward in order to kind of boost you right back up. I like the way that this album was put together, and I like the way in which it tracks. It's got a great, great flow to it. Overall, I'd probably have to give this album a very solid score. I'd probably have to give it an 85 out of 100. This has all of the benchmarks of being one of the great rock albums of 2015. It really does. I feel that this is one that Mumford Sons kind of needed, because after having 2 straight smash successes with Sigh No More and Babel, the real question was, where do they go from here? And is it going to be one that's going to be able to follow up with that success? They very easily could have carbon copy dated that formula and done it again with this record, but they instead opted not to do that. And I have to give them tons of kudos for taking that risk and taking that chance, because in my mind, as a music fan, it paid off. But what did you guys think about this album? What did you guys think about Wilder Mind by Mumford & Sons? Let me know in the comments below. And what do you guys think of this group? Is this one of your favorites? Is this just a band you really don't care for? Let me know that down there as well. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful afternoon and a wonderful Cinco de Drinko. Or is it Mayo? I need a drink.